Rain poured mercilessly over Manhattan's busy streets as Ethan Carter, CEO of Carter Enterprises, stared through the floor-to-ceiling windows of his penthouse office. At 35, he had everything money could buy, yet his success felt hollow. The Wall Street Journal had just named him New York's most eligible bachelor, a title that made him smirk with irony. After his ex-fiancée's betrayal 3 years ago, he'd built walls so high that even his closest associates called him the Ice King. Little did he know that fate was about to throw him a curveball that would shatter his carefully constructed world. It happened on a particularly stormy Tuesday evening. As Ethan was leaving his office, he noticed a young woman stumbling in the parking garage. She was clearly pregnant, clutching her belly with one hand while supporting herself against a concrete pillar with the other. Her clothes, though well-worn, spoke of better days, and her face was pale with exhaustion. His first instinct was to walk past other people's problems weren't his concern. But as the woman's knees buckled, something inside him snapped. Maybe it was the way she tried to protect her unborn child even as she fell, or perhaps it was the quiet dignity in her struggle, but Ethan found himself rushing forward. He caught her just before she hit the ground, and for a moment their eyes met. Hers were a striking shade of green, filled with both fear and fierce determination. "I'm fine," she whispered, trying to stand, but her body betrayed her as she slumped against him. "You're clearly not fine," Ethan replied, his usual coldness giving way to concern. "I'm taking you to the hospital." "Please, no hospitals," she pleaded weakly. "I can't afford it's voiced, sir." "That wasn't a question," he cut her off, already lifting her into his arms. Ethan carried the woman to his car, ignoring the curious stares of his security team. He wasn't sure why he was doing this. Helping strangers wasn't exactly his style. Yet, as he glanced at her pale face and trembling hands, he felt an unfamiliar pang of responsibility. The drive to the hospital was tense. The woman sat silently in the passenger seat, her hands protectively cradling her swollen belly. Ethan stole a few glances at her, noticing the dark circles under her eyes and the way she bit her lip nervously. She looked like someone who had been through hell but refused to break. "The Rivière del TV. What's your name?" he asked, breaking the silence. "Sophia," she replied softly, her voice barely audible over the sound of the rain hitting the windshield. "And the father of the baby?" he asked bluntly, his tone more curious than judgmental. Sophia stiffened, her hands tightening around her stomach. "That's none of your business," she said, her voice firmer this time. Ethan raised an eyebrow but didn't press further. He wasn't used to people talking back to him, but there was something about her defiance that intrigued him. When they arrived at the hospital, Sophia hesitated at the entrance. "I told you, I can't afford this," she said, her voice laced with desperation. "Don't worry about it," Ethan replied, already leading her inside. "I'll cover the costs." Sophia looked at him, her green eyes wide with disbelief. "Why are you doing this? You don't even know me." Ethan paused for a moment, unsure of the answer himself. "Let's just say I don't like seeing people collapse in my parking garage," he said dryly, brushing off the question. The hospital staff quickly took Sophia in for an examination, leaving Ethan in the waiting room. He sat there, scrolling through emails on his phone, but his mind kept drifting back to the mysterious woman. Who was she? Why was she alone? And why did he care? After what felt like an eternity, a nurse approached him. "Mr. Carter, the patient is stable. She's just exhausted and malnourished. The baby is fine, but she needs rest and proper care." Ethan nodded, relieved. "Can I see her?" The nurse hesitated. "She's resting now, but she asked to speak with you before she leaves." When Ethan entered the room, Sophia was sitting up in bed, her hands folded neatly in her lap. She looked better, less pale, but there was still a guarded look in her eyes. "Thank you," she said quietly. "I don't know how to repay you." "You don't have to," Ethan replied, leaning against the doorframe. "But you can start by telling me why you're out there alone, pregnant, and clearly struggling." Sophia hesitated, her gaze dropping to her hands. Complicated, she said finally. I don't have anyone, and I don't need anyone. Ethan crossed his arms, his expression skeptical. That's not what it looked like back there. Sophia's jaw tightened, and for a moment Ethan thought she wouldn't answer, but then she sighed, her shoulders slumping. I lost my job a few months ago. My landlord kicked me out when I couldn't pay rent, and the father of this baby, he's not in the picture. Ethan studied her, his sharp mind piecing together the puzzle. She was clearly proud, unwilling to ask for help but also desperate. He admired her strength, even if it was misplaced. Do you have anywhere to go? He asked. Sophia shook her head. I'll figure something out. I always do. Ethan frowned. He didn't know why he cared so much, but the thought of her wandering the streets in her condition didn't sit right with him. You can't just figure something out. You need stability for yourself and the baby. Sophia looked at him warily. And what do you suggest? That I move into your penthouse? She asked, her tone half joking. Ethan smirked. Not quite, but I do have a position open at my company. It's nothing glamorous, just a temporary assistant role. It'll give you a steady paycheck and a chance to get back on your feet. Sophia blinked, clearly taken aback. Why would you do that for me? Ethan shrugged. Call it a business decision. You seem capable and I need someone who won't waste my time. Sophia hesitated, her pride warring with her practicality. Finally, she nodded. Okay, but just until I can stand on my own. Deal, Ethan said, extending his hand. Sophia shook it, her grip firm despite her exhaustion. As Ethan left the hospital that night, he couldn't shake the feeling that his life had just taken an unexpected turn. He didn't know what it was about Sophia Bennett, but something told him she was going to change everything. The next morning, Sophia arrived at Carter Enterprises, feeling out of place in her second-hand blazer and worn-out shoes. The towering glass building seemed to radiate power and wealth, a stark contrast to her current reality. She clutched her bag nervously, her other hand instinctively resting on her belly. Ethan was already in his office, reviewing reports, when his assistant informed him of Sophia's arrival. He glanced at the clock. She was 10 minutes early. That earned her a small point in his book. When Sophia entered, Ethan gestured for her to sit. Welcome to Carter Enterprises, he said, his tone professional but not unkind. You'll be working as my temporary assistant. Your main tasks will include organizing schedules, handling correspondence, and assisting with minor projects. Think you can handle that? Sophia straightened her back, meeting his gaze. I can handle it. Ethan smirked slightly. Good. Let's see how you do. Over the next few weeks, Sophia proved herself to be more than capable. Despite her lack of experience in the corporate world, she was quick to learn and surprisingly efficient. She worked tirelessly, often staying late to ensure everything was perfect. Ethan found himself impressed by her determination and work ethic. But it wasn't just her skills that caught his attention. It was the little things. How she always carried a small notebook to jot down ideas, how she instinctively placed a hand on her belly whenever she laughed, and how her green eyes lit up when she talked about the baby. Ethan, who had always prided himself on keeping his personal and professional lives separate, found himself drawn to her in ways he couldn't explain. He started noticing her more, how she tucked a strand of hair behind her ear when she was focused, how she hummed softly to herself when she thought no one was listening. One evening, as they worked late on a presentation, Ethan noticed Sophia rubbing her back, her face etched with discomfort. Are you okay? He asked, his voice softer than usual. Sophia looked up, startled. I'm fine, just a little back pain. It's normal during pregnancy. Ethan frowned. You should go home and rest. I can finish this. Sophia shook her head. I'm fine, really. I don't want to leave you with extra work. Ethan leaned back in his chair, studying her. You're stubborn, you know that? Sophia smiled faintly. I've been told. Ethan hesitated for a moment before speaking again. You don't have to do this alone, you know? If you ever need help, I'm here. Sophia's smile faltered, and for a moment she looked vulnerable. "Thank you," she said quietly, "but I've learned not to rely on anyone. It's safer that way." Ethan wanted to argue, to tell her that not everyone would let her down, but he held back. He knew better than anyone how hard it was to trust after being hurt. As the weeks turned into months, their relationship continued to evolve. Ethan found himself looking forward to their conversations, which often strayed from work to more personal topics. He learned that Sophia loved to read, especially mystery novels, and that she had once dreamed of becoming a teacher. She, in turn, discovered that beneath Ethan's cold exterior was a man who loved classical music and had a dry sense of humor. One day, as they were having lunch in his office, Sophia asked, "Why did you help me that night? You didn't have to." Ethan paused, caught off guard by the question. "I don't know," he admitted. "Maybe I saw something in you, or maybe I just didn't want to feel like a complete jerk." Sophia laughed, the sound light and genuine. "Well, whatever the reason, I'm grateful." Ethan smiled, a rare, genuine smile that softened his usually sharp features. "You're welcome." But not everything was smooth sailing. One afternoon, during a meeting with the board of directors, one of the senior members made a snide comment about Sophia's presence in the company. "Isn't it a bit unorthodox to hire someone with no experience, especially in her condition?" the man said, his tone dripping with condescension. Ethan's jaw tightened and his eyes flashed with anger. "Sophia is here because she's qualified and hard-working," he said coldly. "Her personal life is none of your concern." The room fell silent, and the man quickly looked away, muttering an apology. Sophia, who had been sitting quietly in the corner, felt a surge of gratitude, and something else, something warmer toward Ethan. Later that evening, as they walked out of the office together, Sophia turned to him. "Thank you for standing up for me today." Ethan shrugged. "You didn't deserve that, and I don't tolerate disrespect in my company." Sophia smiled. Still, it meant a lot. Ethan looked at her, his expression softening. "You mean a lot," he said quietly, almost as if he hadn't meant to say it out loud. Sophia's breath caught, and for a moment they just stood there, the air between them charged with unspoken emotions. But before either of them could say anything, Sophia's phone buzzed, breaking the moment. As the days went on, Ethan found it harder and harder to ignore his growing feelings for Sophia. He had always prided himself on his self-control, but with her, it was different. She made him feel things he hadn't felt in years, things he wasn't sure he wanted to feel. One evening, as they were leaving the office, Ethan offered to drive Sophia home. She hesitated but eventually agreed. During the drive, they talked about everything and nothing, the conversation flowing easily. When they reached her apartment, Ethan walked her to the door. "If you ever need anything," he said, his voice low, "you know where to find me." Sophia looked up at him, her green eyes searching his. "Thank you, Ethan, for everything." Ethan nodded, his gaze lingering on her for a moment before he turned and walked away. As he got into his car, he couldn't shake the feeling that Sophia Bennett was becoming more than just a temporary assistant. She was becoming someone he couldn't imagine his life without. The weeks passed, and the bond between Ethan and Sophia grew stronger. Ethan found himself looking for excuses to spend more time with her, whether it was asking for her input on projects or inviting her to lunch under the guise of discussing work. Sophia, though hesitant at first, began to let her guard down. For the first time in a long while, she felt safe. But the fragile peace between them was about to be shattered. One evening, as Ethan was working late in his office, he noticed Sophia had left her bag behind. He picked it up, intending to return it to her the next morning, but as he moved it, a small photograph slipped out and landed on his desk. Ethan froze when he saw it. The photo showed Sophia standing next to a man in an expensive suit, his arm draped casually around her shoulders. The man looked familiar. Too familiar. Ethan's chest tightened as he realized who it was. Daniel Harrington, a wealthy investor, and one of Carter Enterprises' biggest rivals. Ethan's mind raced. Was this the father of Sophia's baby? Why hadn't she told him? And why was she working for him of all people if she had ties to Harrington? Questions swirled in his head, and for the first time in years, he felt something he couldn't quite name: jealousy, anger, and a deep sense of betrayal. The next morning, Ethan confronted Sophia in his office. His usual calm demeanor was replaced by a cold, sharp edge. "Care to explain this?" he asked, holding up the photograph. Sophia's face went pale. She reached for the photo, but Ethan pulled it back. "Who is he, Sophia? Is this the father of your baby?" Sophia's hands trembled as she took a deep breath. "It's not what you think," she said quietly. "Then tell me what to think," Ethan snapped, his voice harsher than he intended. "You've been working here for months, and you never mentioned you had a connection to Daniel Harrington. Why?" Sophia looked away, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "Because I didn't want you to judge me," she said, her voice breaking. "Yes, Daniel is the father of my baby, but he doesn't want anything to do with us. When I told him I was pregnant, he told me to get rid of it. When I refused, he cut me off completely." Ethan's jaw tightened, his anger shifting from Sophia to Harrington. "So you've been doing this all on your own," he said, his voice softer now. Sophia nodded, tears streaming down her face. "I didn't want to tell you because I didn't want your pity. I've been through enough already." Ethan stared at her, his heart aching at the pain in her voice. He wanted to say something, to comfort her, but he didn't know how. Instead, he turned away, running a hand through his hair. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" he asked, his voice quieter now. "Because I didn't think it mattered," Sophia said. "I didn't want to drag you into my mess. You've already done so much for me." Ethan turned back to her, his expression unreadable. "It does matter, Sophia. You matter." Sophia's breath caught, and for a moment, they just stood there, the air between them heavy with unspoken emotions. But before either of them could say anything, Ethan's phone buzzed, breaking the moment. That evening, Ethan couldn't stop thinking about Sophia and the weight she had been carrying alone. He thought about Harrington, the man who had abandoned her, and felt a surge of anger. How could someone walk away from their own child? And how could Sophia still be so strong after everything she had been through? The next day, Ethan made a decision. He called Sophia into his office and handed her a folder. "What's this?" she asked, frowning as she opened it. "It's a legal agreement," Ethan said. "I've arranged for you to have full custody of the baby. Harrington won't be able to interfere, even if he changes his mind." Sophia stared at him, her eyes wide with shock. You did this for me?" Ethan shrugged, trying to downplay the gesture. "It's the least I could do." Sophia's hands trembled as she closed the folder. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "I don't know how to repay you." "You don't have to," Ethan said, his voice soft. "I just want you to be happy." Sophia looked at him, her green eyes filled with gratitude and something else, something deeper. "You've already done so much for me, Ethan, more than anyone ever has." Ethan hesitated, his heart pounding in his chest. "I care about you, Sophia, more than I should." Sophia's breath hitched, and for a moment she didn't know what to say, but before she could respond, Ethan stepped back, his walls going up again. "Take the rest of the day off," he said, his tone more formal now. "You deserve it." Sophia nodded, clutching the folder to her chest as she left the office, but as she walked away, she couldn't shake the feeling that Ethan Carter was more than just her boss. He was becoming someone she couldn't imagine her life without. Ethan couldn't focus on work for the rest of the day. His mind kept drifting back to Sophia, her strength, her vulnerability, and the way she had faced so much on her own. He had always prided himself on being logical and detached, but with her, everything felt different. For the first time in years, he wanted to let someone in. He wanted to be there for her, not just as her boss, but as someone she could rely on. But he knew it wouldn't be easy. Sophia had built walls around herself just as he had. If he wanted her to trust him, he would have to prove that he wasn't like the people who had let her down before. The next morning, Ethan arrived at the office earlier than usual. He had spent the night thinking about how to approach Sophia, and he had come to a decision. He wasn't going to push her or overwhelm her. Instead, he would show her, little by little, that she wasn't alone anymore. When Sophia arrived, she was surprised to find a small bouquet of flowers on her desk. Tucked inside was a handwritten note. "For everything you've been through, you deserve something beautiful." Sophia stared at the note, her heart pounding. She wasn't used to kindness, especially not from someone like Ethan. She glanced toward his office, where the door was slightly ajar, but she didn't go in. Instead, she sat down at her desk, running her fingers over the petals of the flowers as a small smile tugged at her lips. Over the next few days, Ethan continued to find small ways to show Sophia that he cared. He made sure she had everything she needed to be comfortable at work, from an ergonomic chair to healthy snacks for her and the baby. He even started driving her home in the evenings, insisting that it wasn't safe for her to take public transportation in her condition. At first, Sophia resisted. "You don't have to do all this for me," she said one evening as they sat in his car outside her apartment. "I know I don't have to," Ethan replied, his voice calm but firm. "I want to." Sophia looked at him, her green eyes searching his face for any sign of insincerity. But all she saw was genuine concern. "Why?" she asked softly. "Why do you care so much?" Ethan hesitated, his hands tightening on the steering wheel. "Because you deserve it," he said finally. "You've been through so much, and you've handled it all on your own, but you don't have to anymore. I'm here, Sophia, for you, for the baby, for whatever you need." Sophia's breath caught, and for a moment she didn't know what to say. No one had ever said anything like that to her before. She wanted to believe him, but a part of her was still afraid. What if he changed his mind? What if he left, just like everyone else? "Thank you," she said quietly, her voice trembling. "But I don't want to be a burden." "You're not a burden," Ethan said firmly. "You're important to me." Sophia's heart skipped a beat, but before she could respond, Ethan opened the car door and stepped out. "Come on," he said, walking around to her side. "Let me help you inside." As the days turned into weeks, Sophia began to let her guard down. She started to trust Ethan, not just as her boss, but as someone who genuinely cared about her. They spent more time together, both at work and outside of it. Ethan took her to doctor's appointments, helped her shop for baby supplies, and even started reading parenting books in his spare time. One evening, as they sat in her small apartment, assembling a crib for the baby, Sophia couldn't help but laugh at the sight of Ethan struggling with the instructions. Who knew the great Ethan Carter could be defeated by a crib, she teased, her laughter filling the room. Ethan looked up at her, a rare smile tugging at his lips. "I'm a CEO, not a carpenter," he said dryly. "But I'll figure it out." Sophia shook her head, still smiling. "You don't have to do all this, you know." Ethan set down the screwdriver and looked at her, his expression serious. "I want to," he said softly. "I want to be here for you, Sophia. For you and the baby." Sophia's smile faded, and for a moment she just stared at him, her heart pounding. She wanted to believe him, but the fear of being hurt again held her back. "Ethan, Before she could finish, Ethan reached out and gently took her hand. "You don't have to say anything," he said. "I just want you to know that I'm not going anywhere, no matter what." Sophia felt tears prick her eyes. But this time, they weren't tears of sadness. For the first time in a long while, she felt hope. That night, as Ethan left her apartment, he couldn't help but feel a sense of peace. He knew it would take time for Sophia to fully trust him, but he was willing to wait. For her and for the baby, he would wait as long as it took. Months passed, and the seasons changed. Winter gave way to spring, and with it came a sense of renewal and hope. Sophia was now in her final trimester, and the baby's arrival was just weeks away. Ethan had been by her side every step of the way, proving time and again that his promises weren't empty words. He had become her rock, her confidant, and though she hadn't admitted it to herself yet, her heart had started to open to him in ways she never thought possible. One evening, as they sat together in Ethan's penthouse, Sophia had reluctantly agreed to stay there during the final weeks of her pregnancy, for safety and comfort. She looked at him and felt a wave of gratitude. He had done so much for her, more than anyone ever had. But more than that, he had shown her what it meant to be cared for, to be valued. "Ethan," she said softly, breaking the comfortable silence between them. He looked up from the book he was reading, his expression attentive. "What is it?" I don't know how to thank you for everything you've done," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "You've been there for me in ways I never expected. I don't know what I would have done without you." Ethan set the book down and leaned forward, his gaze steady and warm. "You don't have to thank me, Sophia. I told you before, I'm here because I want to be. You and the baby, you're important to me." Sophia's heart raced at his words, and for a moment, she couldn't look away from him. There was something in his eyes, something raw and honest that made her feel safe in a way she hadn't felt in years. But before she could respond, a sharp pain shot through her abdomen, and she gasped, clutching her belly. Ethan was on his feet in an instant. "Sophia, what's wrong?" "I think," she said, her voice strained, "I think it's time." The drive to the hospital was a blur of flashing lights and hurried words. Ethan stayed calm, but inside he was a storm of emotions. Worry, excitement, and a deep, unshakable need to make sure Sophia and the baby were okay. When they arrived, the medical staff quickly took over, and Ethan found himself pacing the waiting room, his heart pounding with every passing second. Hours later, a nurse finally came out to find him. "Mr. Carter, you can come in now." Ethan followed her into the room, his breath catching when he saw Sophia lying in the hospital bed, cradling a tiny bundle in her arms. She looked exhausted but radiant, her face glowing with a mixture of relief and joy. "Ethan," she said softly, her eyes meeting his. "Come, meet her." Her. The word hit him like a wave, and as he stepped closer, he felt his chest tighten with emotion. Sophia gently shifted the baby so Ethan could see her tiny face, rosy cheeks, a button nose, and a head full of dark hair. She was perfect. "She's beautiful," Ethan said, his voice barely above a whisper. Sophia smiled, tears glistening in her eyes. "She is, isn't she?" Ethan reached out hesitantly, his hand trembling slightly as he touched the baby's tiny hand. Her fingers curled around his, and in that moment, something inside him shifted. He had spent his entire life building walls, keeping people at a distance, but this tiny, fragile life had broken through them all in an instant. "What's her name?" he asked, his voice thick with emotion. Sophia hesitated for a moment before answering. "I was thinking, Lily. It was my grandmother's name." "Lily?" Ethan repeated, a soft smile tugging at his lips. "It's perfect." The days that followed were a whirlwind of sleepless nights and new beginnings. Ethan insisted on taking care of everything. Hospital bills, baby supplies, even hiring a part-time nanny to help Sophia adjust. But more than that, he was there. He held Lily when she cried, changed diapers without complaint, and spent hours just watching her sleep, marveling at how something so small could bring so much joy. Sophia, too, found herself changing. For so long she had been afraid to let anyone in, but Ethan had shown her that not everyone would leave. He had proven time and again that he was different, and as she watched him with Lily, her heart swelled with a love she hadn't thought she was capable of feeling again. One evening, as they sat together in the nursery, Ethan rocking Lily to sleep while Sophia watched from the doorway, she realized she couldn't keep her feelings to herself any longer. "Ethan," she said softly, stepping into the room. He looked up, his expression warm and open. "What is it?" She hesitated, her heart pounding. I need you to know how much you mean to me. You've been there for me in ways I never thought anyone would, and I think I'm falling in love with you." Ethan's breath caught, and for a moment he just stared at her, his eyes searching hers. Then he stood, carefully placing Lily in her crib before turning to face Sophia. "I've been in love with you for months," he admitted, his voice low and steady. "I just didn't know if you felt the same." Sophia's eyes filled with tears, and she stepped closer, her hands trembling as she reached for his. "I do," she whispered. "I'm scared, but I do." Ethan cupped her face in his hands, his touch gentle but firm. "You don't have to be scared anymore," he said. "I'm not going anywhere. You and Lily, you're my family now." Sophia let out a soft, shaky laugh, tears streaming down her face as she leaned into him. "I love you," she said, her voice barely audible. "I love you too," Ethan replied, his voice filled with a quiet intensity. And as they stood there, holding each other in the soft glow of the nursery, they both knew that this was the beginning of something beautiful, a new chapter, a new family, and a love that would carry them through whatever came next.